Motown magic, smooth harmonies, unforgettable hooks. That's the legacy of the Temptations. Hailing from Detroit, these guys took the music world by storm in the 60s and 70s, churning out hits for Motown records that still get toes tapping today. Millions of albums sold, countless awards. The Temptations are undeniable music royalty. But the story goes deeper than chart-topping hits. This video explores the evolution of the Temptations, from their iconic 60s lineup featuring Otis Williams, Melvin Franklin, David Ruffin, Eddie Kendricks, and Paul Williams, to their later years. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's go. Otis Miles Jr. As a teenager, Otis Miles Jr. found his passion for music and decided to use his mother's maiden name, becoming Otis Williams. He formed several singing groups, including Otis Williams and the Siberians, the El Domingos, and The Distance. In 1959, The Distance had a local hit with Come On, co-written by Williams and their manager Johnny May Matthews, and featuring Richard Street on lead vocals. However, their later recordings didn't see the same success. After receiving an offer from Berry Gordy of Motown Records, Williams, along with bandmates Elbridge, Al Bryant, and Richard Street, left The Distance. Eddie Kendricks and Paul Williams from the Primes later joined them, forming the Elgins. They signed with Motown in March 1961 and became known as The Temptations, as the name Elgins was already taken. The Temptations went on to become one of the most successful soul music acts over nearly 5 decades. Members such as David Ruffin, Dennis Edwards, Richard Street, Damon Harris, Ron Tyson, Allie Ollie Woodson, Theo Peoples, Ray Davis, and former Spinners singer G.C. Cameron all contributed to the group. Williams sang both tenor and baritone vocals as part of the Temptations. Some of the Temptations' biggest hits include My Girl and I Know I'm Losing You. The group has won 4 Grammy Awards and received 9 nominations. Despite being with the Temptations the longest, Williams rarely sang lead. Instead, he focused on his role as the group's leader and organizer, providing background, baritone in the middle vocals. He can be heard on tracks like Don't Send Me Away from the 1967 album The Temptations with a Lot of Soul and the intro to Check Yourself. Otis Williams has had a few notable moments singing lead for the Temptations. These include This Guy's in Love with You from the 1968 albums Live at London's Talk of the Town, and Diana Ross and the Supremes joined the Temptations, and I Ain't Got Nothing, a Norman Whitfield-penned tune from 1972's All Directions. Williams has also made non-singing contributions to several Temptations songs. Examples include I'm Gonna Make You Love Me, I'm the Exception to the Rule from the album Sky's the Limit, which features leads from both Eddie Kendricks and Dennis Edwards, the opening verse of Masterpiece, and For Your Love, which is part of a medley with You Send Me on the For Lovers Only album. The frequent lineup changes within the Temptations were so stressful and challenging that Williams and Melvin Franklin made a pact to never leave the group. Franklin stayed with the group until 1994, when health issues forced him to retire. He passed away on February 23, 1995, leaving Otis Williams as the last surviving original member. As of 2024, Williams is still active with the Temptations and has been involved in every release by the band, including their most recent studio album, Temptations 60, which was released on January 28, 2022, and features a collaboration with Motown legend Smokey Robinson. Otis Williams married Josephine Rogers in 1961, and their son, Otis Lamont Miles, was born the same year. The couple divorced in 1964. Sadly, Otis Lamont Miles, who worked in construction, died in a workplace accident in Detroit in 1985. Williams was once engaged to Patti LaBelle, but she ended the engagement when he asked her to quit music and become a housewife. From 1967 to 1973, Williams was married to Ann Kane, who was the housekeeper for Ike and Tina Turner. In 1983, he married his third wife, Arliata Goldie Williams. Arleada's daughter, Elin Carter, was Playboy's Playmate of the Month for June 1994. David Ruffin. When he was a kid in rural Mississippi, living for a time in a house with no running water, he dreamed of being a famous performer. He might as well have imagined walking to the moon. There weren't many paths to wealth and stardom for black people in southern states that were still trapped in the 1940s and 1950s under the oppressive weight of Jim Crow laws and segregation. But David Ruffin could sing like a hurricane and possessed an innate sense of how to connect with people, how to make them smile and laugh and feel what he felt. He just needed a stage. By his mid-20s, Ruffin was the most electric member of the Temptations and a regular presence in North Philadelphia's Uptown Theater, where 2,000 or so fans often squeezed into the theater's Art Deco contours to hear the band's lush harmonies, their arms and legs a blur of matching suits and flawless choreography. 6'2" and lamppost skinny, his face framed by thick dark eyeglasses, Ruffin's vocal cords powered the Temptations' most popular song, My Girl. It went to number 1 in 1965 and has since been played 498 million times on the streaming service Spotify, and a string of other instantly recognizable classics. Ain't Too Proud to Beg, I Wish It Would Rain, I Know, I'm Losing You. Ruffin's ability to embody the ecstasy and agony of songs about love, gained and lost, cast an unbreakable spell on countless admirers who once watched, slack-jawed, as he and the Temptations and other Motown legends dazzled crowds. The performances at the Uptown in the 1960s compelled a young Daryl Hall to finagle his way backstage, where he was befriended by his idols. Off-stage, Ruffin was a jumble of contradictions, playful but short-tempered, ambitious but hindered by hidden demons, at a time when substance abuse and mental health were widely misunderstood. Fate drew him back to Philadelphia in the 1980s, when he was far removed from the limelight and on the other side of an up-and-down solo career. Hall and John Oates invited Ruffin and Eddie Kendricks, another former Temptation, to join them on stage at John F. Kennedy Stadium during Live Aid, where the 89,184 people in attendance greeted the former Motown greats with thunderous applause. It could have been a storybook start to a third-act revival. But David Ruffin died in Philadelphia on June 1, 1991, the victim of what doctors determined to be an accidental overdose of cocaine. He was 50. News coverage of his death veered toward the sensational. David Ruffin collapsed at crack house, blared one headline from the Washington Post. Overdose called massive. He must have built up strong tolerance in past, doctor says, read another from the Philadelphia Daily News. For 3 decades, Ruffin's friends and family have mulled the what-ifs that haunt anyone who has lost someone they love to drug addiction, which has only recently come to be treated as a health epidemic instead of a crime. But there's something else, too. A gnawing sense that Ruffin's legacy was shortchanged by media narratives that focused more on his flaws and the way in which he died than his talents. The Temptations invited Ruffin to join them in 1964, replacing a fellow tenor, Eldridge Bryant. Ruffin had made a compelling case for the position after he climbed on stage with the band in a Detroit lounge and began throwing the microphone up in the air, catching it, doing full splits, plus singing like a man possessed, Williams wrote. Later that year, the group had their first hit, the Smokey Robinson-penned single, The Way You Do the Things You Do. When Ruffin was told that the song was climbing the Billboard charts, he burst into tears. As the band's popularity grew, they toured relentlessly with other Motown artists along the Chitlin Circuit, a network of clubs and theaters on the East Coast, the Midwest, and the South that were welcoming to black performers. The Uptown Theater on North Broad Street was a prominent point on the circuit, an iconic part of Philadelphia's black community, and a venue where musicians could sometimes look out at an audience and see black and white concert-goers enjoying music together. But there was no escaping the racial hatred that coursed through much of the country. Williams described one Temptations appearance in Kentucky that ended in a hail of gunfire, as a group of white men began firing at the band as they loaded their bus, shouting racial slurs and warning them, "Don't you ever come back here again." The Temptations soon reached a higher plane, the stage that Ruffin had fantasized gracing when he was still in Mississippi. Millions tuned in to CBS on Sunday nights to watch Ed Sullivan, and the band was rattled before they performed for his audience, except for Ruffin, who didn't break a sweat. When the crack cocaine epidemic surged in the 1980s, government leaders responded with tactics that disproportionately criminalized and punished people who had addictions, particularly in black communities. Ruffin was arrested in the late 80s for drug possession and went through rehabilitation. He moved to Philadelphia in 1989, lived with a girlfriend, Diane Showers, and palled around with Linster Butch Merle, the owner of a small limo service. Merle remembers watching Ruffin sometimes disappear into properties to buy drugs. He was getting high so much, the man was a walking skeleton. But Ruffin also reached out to his brother Quincy in 1991 and suggested they go back to Mississippi and walk along a lake together, their feet in the sand. He wanted to get back to what life was really all about, his niece said. On May 31st of that year, dressed in Bermuda shorts, white sneakers, and a lime green shirt, Ruffin climbed into a gray limo that belonged to Merle, driven by a man named Donald Brown. They ended up at a property on 52nd Street near Columbia Avenue in West Philadelphia, where Ruffin split 10 vials of crack cocaine with another man, William Nowell, according to reports at that time. It was shortly before 3 a.m. on June 1st when Brown pulled up to the emergency room entrance to the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania and told hospital staff that his passenger, David Ruffin, had overdosed. The singer was pronounced dead an hour later. Much of the ensuing news coverage treated the details of Ruffin's death salaciously. Of particular interest was whether someone had robbed Ruffin, who had recently toured with Kendricks and another ex-Temptation, Dennis Edwards. One of Ruffin's managers suggested he could have carried as much as $40,000 on him the night he died, but he arrived at the hospital with just $53. Cheryl Ruffin Robinson said her family has long believed that there was foul play involved in her father's death, and many questions they have about his final hours are still unanswered. Their grief was compounded by stories that they felt tore his character down, she said. They blamed the person instead of the disease. Thousands attended his funeral in Detroit, a send-off that said more about Ruffin and what his music meant to people than any of the headlines about his death. Candy Staton sometimes revisits one of her favorite memories of her old friend. She was performing at a club in Detroit. Ruffin ventured inside and somehow got his hands on a microphone. From a seat in the audience, he began to serenade her. She starts to sing the same words that he did, slowly, carefully, like someone unfolding an old letter that might crumble. Melvin Franklin. David English was born in Montgomery, Alabama, to Rose English, a teenage mother from nearby Mobile. His biological father, the preacher at the family's church, impregnated Rose through rape. After David was born, Rose married Willard Franklin and moved to Detroit. However, David stayed with his grandmother in Mobile until he was 10, when he finally moved to Detroit to join his mother and stepfather in 1952. As a teenager, David took his stepfather's surname and became known as Melvin Franklin. He joined several local singing groups in Detroit, including the Voice Masters, where he sang with Lamont Dozier and David Ruffin and frequently performed with Richard Street. In 1959, the Voice Masters signed with Anna Records, a label co-founded by Berry Gordy's sister, Anna. The group recorded several singles, including Needed and Hope and Pray. Despite not being related, Franklin often affectionately referred to Street and Ruffin as his cousins. During this time, he also romantically pursued future Supreme singer Mary Wilson. In 1958, Otis Williams, a classmate of Franklin's at Detroit's Northwestern High School, formed a singing group called Otis Williams and the Siberians. When their bass singer, Arthur Walton, left the group to finish high school, Williams remembered Franklin from the Voice Masters. Spotting Franklin walking in the neighborhood, Williams offered him the position of bass singer in the group. Franklin replied, "Well, I don't know you. You have to ask my mama." After Williams explained the situation to Rose Franklin, she agreed to let her son join the group. When the group's lead singer, Bernard Plain, also left, Franklin brought in Richard Street to replace him. The Siberians, now renamed Otis Williams and The Distance, consisted of Williams, Franklin Street, Elbridge Al Bryant, and James Pee Wee Crawford. They recorded at Matthews Northern Records, releasing singles like Come On in 1959 and All Right in 1960. During this period, Franklin briefly attended Wayne State University. However, a dispute over royalties with Matthews led to the termination of their contract with Northern Records. By 1960, The Distance had been reduced to a trio after Street left the group. After losing The Distance name, the remaining members joined forces with Paul Williams and Eddie Kendricks to form the Elgins. In March 1961, they signed with Motown Records under a new name, The Temptations. As a member of The Temptations, Franklin earned the nickname Blue from his bandmates due to his love for the Italian song Nel Blu, Dipinto di Blu, known in English as Volare. Franklin and Otis Williams were the only founding Temptations who never left the group. Franklin's deep bass vocals became one of the group's signature sounds. He sang lead on several tracks, including I Truly, Truly Believe from The Temptations' Wish It Would Rain, 1968, Silent Night from Give Love at Christmas, The Prophet from A Song for You, 1975, and his signature live performance of Old Man River. Franklin was often called upon to deliver ad-libs, harmony vocals, and notable sections of the main verses, especially during the psychedelic soul era. One memorable contribution was his line "And the Band Played On" in the 1970 hit single Ball of Confusion, That's What the World Is Today. In the fall of 1978, Franklin was shot in the hand and leg while trying to stop a carjacking outside a hair salon in West Hollywood. He had left his car running when he stopped to talk with a female friend. During the struggle, the carjacker recognized Franklin from The Temptations, pushed him out of the car, and drove off. This incident prevented Franklin from joining The Temptations on their upcoming tour of Poland, which was still behind the Iron Curtain at the time. Otis Williams took over Franklin's bass parts during his recovery. Besides his work with The Temptations, Franklin also ventured into voice acting. In 1984, he provided the voice for the character Wheels in the animated series Pole Position. In 1989, Melvin Franklin was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of The Temptations. In the summer of 1994, he was rushed to the hospital and diagnosed with necrotizing fasciitis. Surgeons operated on his arm to save his life, but since he was immunocompromised, he remained at risk for the disease returning. A few months later, in September 1994, The Temptations received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. In January 1995, Franklin's last recording with The Temptations was Life Is But a Dream for the album For Lovers Only. After Franklin's death, Ray Davis replaced him in the group. Franklin was married to his second wife, Kimberly, at the time of his death. He had 5 children, David English Jr., Davette English, Nikeos English, Felicia Johnson, and Larissa Douglas. Diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in 1968, Franklin used cortisone to manage the symptoms and continue performing. The constant use of cortisone weakened his immune system, leading to other health problems, including diabetes in the early 1980s and later necrotizing fasciitis. Franklin took oxygen tanks with him while on tour to manage his illnesses. In January 1995, while recording the album For Lovers Only, Ali Woodson and Otis Williams noticed Franklin's ankle bleeding through his sock. He was taken home to recover, but on February 17th, he fell into a coma and remained unconscious. On February 23, 1995, Franklin died from heart failure at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center at the age of 52. His funeral was widely attended, and Smokey Robinson commemorated him with the song "Really Gonna Miss You," a moment recreated for the Temptations miniseries. He is interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in the Hollywood Hills. In February 2013, Franklin was posthumously awarded a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award as a member of the Temptations. On August 17th, he was inducted into the Rhythm and Blues Music Hall of Fame as a member of the Temptations. Eddie Kendricks. Eddie Kendricks may not have been a household name, but his unique and soulful voice was unmistakable. As a co-founder of the Temptations, he sang on many of the songs that earned them the title of the Emperors of Soul. Eddie's smooth falsetto also graced several of his own landmark hits. Born in Union Springs, Alabama, on December 17, 1939, he passed away too soon at the age of 52 from cancer. During the Temptations' golden era at Motown, Kendrick's light, agile voice perfectly complemented the gritty tones of David Ruffin, the group's other lead singer. Eddie led the vocals on their first charting single, 1962's Dream Come True, and their first R&B #1 hit, The Way You Do the Things You Do. Known for his style both on and off the stage, Eddie was responsible for many of the group's iconic wardrobe choices, adding to their glamorous image. Before leaving the group in 1971, Kendricks led on unforgettable tracks like the energetic Get Ready and their collaboration with the Supremes, I'm Gonna Make You Love Me. He also played a crucial role in the innovative multi-vocal productions by Norman Whitfield that defined their late 60s sound, notably delivering the title line of Ball of Confusion. Tensions within the Temptations led to Eddie Kendricks' departure, but he left on a high note with the melodic and dreamy 1971 hit Just My Imagination, Running Away With Me, which topped both the U.S. pop and R&B charts. After some modest early solo efforts, Kendricks struck gold in 1973 with two #1 hits, Keep On Truckin' and Boogie Down, part of a streak of 9 consecutive R&B top 10 hits that also included Shoeshine Boy. His later years saw less commercial success, and he left Motown in 1978. However, Kendricks and David Ruffin rejoined the Temptations briefly for the 1982 reunion tour and album, produced by Rick James and featuring the exhilarating hit Standing on the Top, which included Kendricks, Ruffin, and Dennis Edwards. The 1980s also brought Kendricks and Ruffin together with their admirers, Daryl Hall and John Oates, for the 1985 album Live at the Apollo. In 1988, Eddie and David released an LP together for RCA before being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with the Temptations in 1989. Diagnosed with lung cancer, Kendricks fought the disease for over a year before passing away in the autumn of 1992. His contributions to soul music remain unforgettable. Unless a singer produces himself, he has to portray the producer, Kendricks said in a 1973 interview with Disc. Which means sometimes what you're doing isn't really you. But I feel if my voice remains distinctive, then that really doesn't matter. The main thing is always to keep your identity. Paul Williams. Paul Williams is celebrated globally as one of the most esteemed music creators of our time. With an illustrious career spanning decades, he has garnered prestigious accolades including an Oscar Award, 3 Grammy Awards, 2 Golden Globe Awards, and an Ivor Novello International Award. Inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, Williams has left an indelible mark with timeless classics like We've Only Just Begun, You and Me Against the World, and The Rainbow Connection, alongside contemporary hits like Touch and Beyond on Daft Punk's acclaimed Album of the Year, Random Access Memories, where he also showcased his talents as a performer. Beyond his achievements in music, Williams serves as president and chairman of the board of the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, ASCAP, advocating for the rights of music creators in the digital era. His compositions have been embraced by a diverse array of musical legends, including Ray Charles, David Bowie, Barbra Streisand, Tony Bennett, Diana Ross, and Elvis Presley, to name just a few. Williams's musical legacy extends to film and television, where his songs and scores have received numerous award nominations, including 6 Oscar nominations. Notably, his iconic song, The Rainbow Connection, featured in The Muppet Movie, has been recognized by the Library of Congress's National Recording Registry, a testament to its enduring cultural and historical significance in the nation's recorded sound heritage. Paul Williams' influence extends beyond music into the realms of film, television, and advocacy. His compositions have left an indelible mark on cinema, with 2 of his songs, The Rainbow Connection and Evergreen, earning spots on the American Film Institute's list of top movie songs of all time. The latter, featured in the Barbra Streisand-Chris Christopherson rendition of A Star Is Born, stands as a testament to Williams's versatility and enduring talent. His contributions to beloved classics such as The Muppet Christmas Carol, Bugsy Malone, and Emmett Otter's Jug Band. Christmas have cemented his status as a master of songcraft. Williams's creativity also shines in his work on Disney productions, including A Muppet's Christmas, Letters to Santa, and collaborations with Gustavo Santaolalla on films like The Book of Life and Maya and the Three. Beyond his artistic endeavors, Williams is a vocal advocate for recovery, drawing from his own journey of sobriety spanning over 3 decades. His insights into addiction and healing, coupled with his certification as a drug rehabilitation counselor from UCLA, are encapsulated in the best-selling book Gratitude and Trust, 6 Affirmations That Will Change Your Life, co-authored with Tracy Jackson. This work not only resonates with readers, but has also been celebrated on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday, underscoring Williams's impact as a beacon of hope and inspiration. While Paul Williams has garnered public acclaim for his multifaceted career as a songwriter, author, and actor, he humorously predicts that he will be most remembered for his roles in the Smokey and the Bandit trilogy, particularly as Little Enos, and for penning the lyrics to the iconic The Love Boat theme song. However, it is the profound sentiment expressed in his lyrics from Bugsy Malone that truly encapsulates his philosophy. You give a little love, and it all comes back to you. You're gonna be remembered for the things that you say and do. Despite his numerous achievements in the entertainment industry, Paul treasures his role as a devoted husband to writer Mariana Williams and as a proud father to his son Cole and daughter Sarah. In his eyes, his family remains his most cherished and fulfilling accomplishment. On August 17, 1973, Williams was discovered deceased inside a vehicle parked in an alley shortly after departing from his then-girlfriend's new residence following an altercation. A firearm was located near his body. His death was determined to be an apparent suicide. According to Otis Williams, Paul had confided thoughts of ending his own life to him and Melvin Franklin several months prior to his death. The circumstances surrounding Williams' passing led the Williams family to suspect that some foul play might have been involved in his demise. As per the coroner's report, Williams had used his right hand to inflict a gunshot wound on the left side of his head. Additionally, a bottle of alcohol was found near Williams's left side, suggesting it had fallen while he was shot. The firearm used had discharged 2 rounds, with only one proving fatal to Williams. As part of the Temptations, Paul Williams was honored posthumously with induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1989, the Vocal Group Hall of Fame in 1999, and the Rhythm and Blues Music Hall of Fame in 2013. Motown later released both of his individual recordings on compilations related to the Temptations during the 1980s and 1990s. In 1998, NBC broadcast The Temptations, a television miniseries spanning 4 hours, based on an autobiographical book by Otis Williams. Actor Christian Payton portrayed Paul Williams in the production. The music video for Diana Ross's song Missing You pays homage to Marvin Gaye, Florence Ballard, Tammy Terrell, and Paul Williams, all former Motown artists who passed away. Thanks for rocking out with us today. We learned a lot about Little Richard. What was your favorite fact you learned about the godfather of rock and roll? Leave a comment below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a video. See you next time.